more people and house more people and house more people affordably, you eventually drill down to zoning and land use as your basic underlying issue. And when that happens, if you follow my trajectory, you do a lot of advocacy, you annoy a lot of people, like Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez, and eventually they punish you by putting you on the planning board and make everyone yell at you. And so that's basically how I got here, is mostly through the route of housing finance and housing advocacy, mostly in the affordable housing. I was the chair of the Rockville Housing Public Housing Authority, and I've been an advocate for housing in Montgomery County for about a decade or so.
Great to hear. Haljin, if you want to give yours next.
Sure. All right. So my name is Ho-Jung Garland, supervisor in Prince George County Planning Department in Urban Design section under Development Review. So my background is, or my academic, training is starting with the landscape architecture master degrees. But from there, I kind of expanded to urban design, urban planning. And my job spans from private sector to public sector, and also the small government to the county government level, and also planning department to park department. And I did also the revitalization as well. So, I really enjoy seeing the full cycle from the long range planning to the implementation aspect. And also, among the implementation, not just planning, but also park with open space and physically active environment and such. That is very important to me. And I developed my kind of career mission to be community oriented and helping the community and providing the good livable environment itself. So that became my motto as the planner itself. So that's it.
Natalie, if you want to go now.
Okay. Yes. Hi, guys. My name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. I'm a council member in Montgomery County. I am the chair of the Economic Development Committee for the County Council, and I am a member of the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee. I have been here in this position for 3 years now, but before I arrived, I was a member of the planning board, just like James. I was there for 7 years, became vice chair, worked on over 20 sector plans, including downtown Bethesda, Vera's Mill, the county's bike master plan, so on and so forth. And so I resigned from my position to run for office, and I won. My platform was, oh, thank you, James. My platform was on housing. I do not hold back. I am a strong believer that we need to upzone our communities to create more housing and create more urban environments. That's actually in the environmental way, the sustainable way. I'm a big public transportation advocate. And before I was involved in this whole thing, my first job out of college was actually working for CASA, the Latino nonprofit. And one of the things that I had to do for CASA was working on the Purple Line. I was the CASA staffer on the Purple Line Coalition. So that was my first advocacy effort on relating to land use and transportation. That was many years ago. And so after a while, there was an opening on the planning board, and I was pretty much recruited to be in that position. I was the first millennial on the planning board, and I'm an immigrant. I'm the only immigrant on the county council. And I just passed a big bill with a colleague, Andrew Fritzen, on Tuesday on conversions from office to housing. Just Google it, you'll find the articles about them. And I have another one with him, with Andrew. The second work session is coming up, and it's about upzoning single family homes into duplexes and triplexes in certain locations. Just getting a lot of feedback, very negative too, but that's okay. That's part of the job. And that's it. That's my intro.
Thank you for that. And Aaron, want to go next?
Sure. How y'all doing? My name's Aaron. I'm a planner one at Prince George's County Planning Department. I got my bachelor's degree in urban and regional planning from Salisbury University in May 2022, and I just finished my master's degree at UMD in the community planning program in December 2024. So I'm fresh out the program. I've had a variety of internships at Maryland Department of Planning, Montgomery County Planning Department, Prince George's County Planning Department, and I've had the opportunity to serve lots of different types of communities all over the state, from small towns on the Eastern Shore to DC's metropolitan suburbs. I've assisted communities in zoning review and analysis, community engagement, sustainable communities, and various other responsibilities. Um, so yeah, I'm brand new in the as a full-time employee as a planner. So I'm happy to share you know lessons I learned about transitioning to this position, about applying to jobs, and um, about the program itself. So whatever you guys want to know, I'm happy to share.
Thank you for that. So we can go ahead and get started with the um panel uh for Q&A. So first, I think the first topic it could be like job search because I think we're all like college students and it's pretty much all that's on our mind or good portion of what's on our mind. So yeah, what kind of advice do you guys have in terms of like the job search process and applying to internships as well as full-time positions?
No, I'm curious to listen because I'm a Fed and I may be doing the job search more sooner rather than later, honestly, at this point. Um, I, I, I would love to be able to give advice on this, but like I said, I came in through the housing side primarily, so I've always been coming in on affordable housing and working. I worked at HUD and then I worked locally and in advocacy. I do. If there's any advice, I think that one of them is that advocacy can't hurt you in finding a job if you've got passion about, if it's planning for parks, it's open space. There's plenty of options there. If it's transit, you can get involved on the local level and you'll end up meeting and getting to know a lot of folks. In the spaces that you're interested in and in what you did. I mean, I'm on the planning board because I made myself a pain for several years. Testifying with Action Committee for Transit and MoCo for All Housing Advocacy Group and things like that. So there's at least in my opinion, sort of no downside to getting involved with the things that brought you to the sort of, wanting to be a planner and getting invested and involved in it in the first place.
That's great. That's great. Uh,
Aaron, you should talk, Aaron. I mean, you based on your
Aaron's
background.
in the know.
Uh,
Sure. So the first thing I'll say is there's no such thing as too early to be applying to jobs. Even if you think, oh, I don't graduate until next year. Um, it's just good to have things set up for yourself. And even if um, you might get interviews and you might not get it yet because you haven't finished your master's degree, that's fine. You just get that interview experience, and that's really valuable. So yeah, I would say just to start. I was continuously applying to stuff throughout my master's program, and I interviewed a few times, and each of those interviews made it easier to do the next one. And the other thing I'll say is if you're if it's possible, open yourself up to applying to jobs outside of the DC, Baltimore metro area. There's a lot of jobs here, and it's really nice to be here. But there's also opportunities, on the Eastern Shore where I'm from, in Western Maryland, and even in Anne Arundel County. Um, in Southern Maryland, and though there's going to be fewer people applying to those jobs. So if you're not opposed to relocating and doing a little bit of exploring the state, seeing what else is out there, I highly recommend submitting an application to those other departments.
Thank you for that. I think Felix had a question.
Hi, yes. Well, first, thank you to the panelists for making the time to, out of your busy Friday, first off, to show up and talk to a bunch of students. My question is actually a little bit related to the Fed's comment that James mentioned. I think that like I'm fairly new to community planning personally. I'm walking in from a landscape architecture
Mm,
experience, and I'm now working on a dual degree. Um, and I got into this by way of a graduate assistantship. Well, two ways by way of the graduate assistantship that I have with the Purple Line Corridor Coalition. So I
oh
know
yeah.
like it was my first foray into, planning conversations at all. And the great work that's been done there to um, reinforce, and support communities directly impacted by the development and the potential displacement was a great motivator to like figure out what planning is and how I can practice.
Mhm,
And to, the other aspects, I also have a public health advocacy background. And so
mhm,
I've done a lot of work to, at the local level in DC, um, highlight the missteps, pretty and similar to James, right? Ruffle the feathers of the mayor, who continues to prioritize development over, communities impacted by um,
mhm.
mismanagement of funds. And so, which is just to say that I have like a bunch of things that are kind of circulating in mind when it comes to planning, but I'm still, because I'm new and because of the federal level atrophy, that's, the fascist takeover, whatever you want to call it, of the federal government. It's hard to know what to expect, what that may impact and do at the state and local level as far as trickle down. I
Mm.
know that other industries are gutted. But I think with planning particularly, what do you see happening at the state and local level given this new landscape? And to some of the points that were mentioned by Aaron, say you do consider going to more rural areas, some of those community members might not welcome, someone who doesn't look like them. It might feel more emboldened to others or
Mhm.
marginalized. And so I just really want to know what your thoughts are on uh what's going on at the federal
Uh,
level. And yeah.
I have lots of thoughts, some of which we can talk about, and some of which I'm not going to say publicly. And then I'll say something real quick, and then I'll give it over to Councilmember Franny Gonzalez, who I think has comments on it. On a practical level, there's the work's going to have to be done, whether it's in public health or planning or housing. The work needs to be done. Despite what a whole bunch of folks say, there's reasons that these jobs are there. This is not make work nonsense. Like for people, we have things that we need to do and we need to get done. Some of it's not going to get done because of these cuts. We're going through the budget process right now, and the council member can talk to it more. But I mean, much of our money, our same services budget every year comes essentially from local taxes and local funds. That's essentially what funds what we do, at least at the planning board, primarily, and at the parks department. So it's going to be tougher, but the positions and the organizations, the institutions are going to be there doing the jobs that they need to do. So there is going to be a trickle down impact. I mean, particularly in a place like Montgomery County, where a large part of your tax base is federal workers. Um, but generally, like I said, the work is there and the work needs to be done. It's sort of adding on to the work that's going to be harder because that's where we often go outside for federal and state and other funds and foundations and stuff like that. So there'll be opportunities. There'll probably be less than they were. I think Aaron's got a good point of like there's a lot of opportunities in other places, sort of outside. Some of the cities that are doing some of the biggest work are in places like Minnesota and Texas and Austin and the West Coast and stuff like that. And so there's a lot, even places, Nebraska, they've done some good work on zoning and land use. So there are some options out there. I think I don't think that it's going to come be a complete collapse. I think the local governments are going to take over a lot more um, of the work and have a lot more sort of put on them with the federal government pulling back in so many places. So there's going to be a tension between how much you can afford and how much it needs to get done. And that's just going to be something you have to navigate. I wish I could tell you what it's going to be. Because they fire 10,000 people, and then they hire a bunch of them back 2 weeks later, but then they put them on administrative leave. And I'm just sitting there waiting for our RIF plan to come out. It's like next week when we hear. So yeah, it's gonna be up and down, but the work needs to be done. And I think that that's a good indicator. Like this, you can't, if you're on the ground, if you're a local official, I think like, council member is, and I think like, Aaron and, we're all working for the local government. It's not like we're twiddling our thumbs all day. There's stuff that needs to get done, and somebody will have to be there to do it.
So if I may pitch in about the
Mhm.
things need to get done, I'm gonna pitch in on that. Since I'm working in Prince George County government, this right now, and speaking of housing, we're getting inundating amount of housing development in our county right now. I guess, so far, DC, Maryland, Montgomery County has been very much fully developed, or just this, more infill housing at this point. But Prince George County still has a pretty decent amount of land left. So we're getting like 500, 600, like townhouses after townhouses, just inundating amount of the project is coming in. So we've been so busy and swamped. So every month we've been having our hiring, and I'm just closing my last position. But there will be more position opening. So I really want you to look out for job opening under MSPPC. There will be more position opening. So put out there for your resume, and also speaking on resume, this is a little bit more technicality of that. Since I've been doing a lot of hiring process and review, when you're writing your resume, you have to make sure really your resume is coincide with the job description. In other words, let's say if they're looking for more, housing for countywide, then you need to sharpen your resume. What is really relatable for the housing aspect, rather than just to like generate your resume and submitting it, because either they are using AI with the keyword research or doing it manually. When you're reading it, if the keyword search is not matching it, whether manually or me reading or a person reading it, you're out. So make sure you do your due diligence and spend the time to deliver really quality resume for the application. And if something is not related, don't bother, because it's almost a distraction of that. Let's say if I have a sales, that shouldn't go there, because it almost like, oh, why you couldn't do more planning related, why you had to do the sales. So it's kind of distraction of that. However, I had actually a candidate who was just or the hire just coming in, who used to work in the sales in the food industry as a retail manager. And he was actually talking about his retail experience and how to do the customer serving and customer circulation and operation, which actually contributed to the urban design in the site condition itself. So if there's a certain condition like that your prior non-planning related is actually contributing your planning related, you definitely got to mention it, because it definitely shows that you are a very unique candidate coming from different background and still can contribute for the urban planning. So I definitely want to mention that. The other thing is, you always need to go out there, network, and put yourself out. ULI, APA, Coalition for Smart Growth, you name it. All those nonprofit, if you can, put your name out there and then, start meeting people and talking to people, that is always helpful. And, even like today, actually, Mr. Chan, the way we got started actually talking is he put his resume out there, and a friend of mine was passing his resume, and that's how we start talking, and that's why he pulled me in for this kind of talk, and now we're building a relationship. All these things it builds up, so start somewhere.
Thank you so much for that. I think Homayon had a question.
Yes. All right. So first of all, it's nice to meet you guys, especially Aaron. I think I'm friends with Aaron. Yeah. So yeah. Regarding what you said, Ms. Garland, yeah, I agree that when we are writing our resume, especially in in planning because it's an interdisciplinary program and it's so it can go anywhere. Yeah, we should look at the job description. However, I mean, I had some issues because I'm still studying and I'm looking for internships. Most of the internships they kind of vague and they don't say like what specifically they're looking for, and that's what I've been like having issues with because actually I have a really extensive background. I've been working in the different sides of planning, like in every part of it, but different in another place, in another location outside the US. So that was kind of hard for me to just pinpoint like exactly which ones I should highlight and emphasize in when I'm submitting my resume, especially like you guys all are like, from PG County, and there's a big program that I applied for the internship, and that one was also one of the vague ones because they said that you just apply to this position and we can just decide like what department you're going to be probably drafted for.
Yeah, so I can actually address that. So, for example, yes, particularly Prince George County is a planning department internship. The way it gets coordinated is, mass amount of the resume, and then from there, each department and section is going to be selecting. So in that case, you need to really put yourself out there that most of you are interested and most of you are you're willing to, and then where your heart is, so you can kind of stand out your true color in a way. But in a case that there is already set designated section and divisions, but the job description is kind of vague. You can't really pinpoint what that is about. You can actually reach out to the either human resource or the hiring manager and get the additional information out. What's happening is in the background, at least in my job setting, my section is urban design, zoning, and subdivision. We're all in the urban the development review division. But if we customize those posting, it takes way too much time with the human resource. It's a little bit of bureaucratic size. We're trying to figure it out. So therefore, we end up with just doing a little more generic posting. So that way, whether it's a subdivisions posting or it's a urban designs posting, we can just do it quickly and put it out there. And once we get the resume, we're going to screen it out, whether this is a zoning person, whether this is urban design person. Mm-hmm. So that could be the process. And if that's the case, if we can better understand is a really which division, which section is this job is for, then you could have a better idea how you need to sharpen your resume.
Can I say two things very quickly because I have a full stop at 4:30. So number one, on the federal conversation, I just got crushed this morning, and we submitted this grant to the federal government to work on Georgia Avenue. James, this is the first group I'm going to be saying this to. And today, and we submitted it last year, and they said no, and they worked with us to improve it. And they said, you do this, we're 100% confident that you're going to get it the following year, which is this year. The administration changed. And they just told me this morning that they're giving the money to another jurisdiction. That was $2 million that I was counting on infrastructure, improvements on Georgia Avenue. So it's iPhone, you gotta mute yourself. There you go. So that's one thing. So, but the second, I can't mute him. Whoever, okay, there you go. The other thing, just to piggyback on what James was saying before, there's a lot going on at the local level. I am so busy right now. There's a lot happening. So there's a lot of jobs going on in Montgomery County too, available. And I'm just on the internship conversation that you guys just had. I hire 3 to 4 interns per summer. Okay, and it's a mix between college graduates, from grad school level, undergrads, and I always get one high school kid because I'm cool like that. Paid internship. I already selected my kids, my people. And I get a lot of applicants. And the way for me, when I see a resume, especially if you are at the graduate level, you better show me what you're good for. You better show me in the resume, this is my expertise and this is why I care. I'm building a caring community. I'm not just here to everybody can talk about housing and building more housing, but it's the why you're doing that. It's humanizing the issue. To me, that's very important. And don't you dare to send me your resume if you haven't proofread it, if you have a whole bunch of grammatical errors. I have received resumes from Georgetown and other places. Embarrassing. So I just boom, delete. So know that it happens to anybody. And then Montgomery County does have, we had at the county council, we have an internship program that is very cool, and they assign people to different departments throughout the whole county, and they pay you very well. And the way it's run, you do say which area do you have an interest, but the resume, how your resume is drafted, will tell staff if they're gonna place you with the police department or the environmental, department, or TEPS, which is the technology department that deals with GIS and so on and so forth. So really make sure that when you draft your resume, it's about you. It's highlighting you. Don't take that for granted, because like at least I get a lot of them. And when I hired my deputy chief of staff about a few months ago, I got a lot of people for that position, people from outside Washington, D.C. as well, the area, the Washington, D.C. region. And I took my time reading and understanding who this person was. And so be you. And with that, my friends, my name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. Nice to meet you. Good luck. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much.
I know.
Have a great one.
You too.
I would like to build off of that and say that it's good to, if you have a lot of different experience and you're wondering what to put on, what not to put on the stuff that you think will bring you closer to what you actually want to do. So it's good to like cater to, what the position is advertising for, but if it's vague and you're not entirely sure what they're looking for, just put the stuff that you're proudest of, the stuff that you would like to do more of in your career. Um, so yeah, just look at what in your experience has prepared you to do what you are looking to do in the future and put that on your resume.
Yeah. And just like Aaron said, just to jump on that, when I don't, the board doesn't hire directly, obviously the staff does, but when we have internships that go out, we usually have project, even if it has some boilerplate, like Hujan was saying, in the thing, we usually have projects planned. Like the communications people will have a project to like meet with folks about a master plan in their area, or the GIS folks will be trying to map. Like we've tried to map every like um champion trees and stuff like that we have without the county. So like those things there's usually projects underlying some of that. And nobody minds if you shoot an email over and say, hey, what are there specific projects planned for this year, for this, for this semester, for the summer, over the time? Do have a general idea of what they might be working on, if there's any projects that, could use some assistance. And if you reach out and find that, you can usually they're people are pretty communicative about that. And we usually have something planned in the background for the interns to do. Like I said, there's a lot of work to do, and we need you to go do some of it. So we usually have a plan for it.
That's great. That's great. Uh, so the reason or what inspired me to make this meeting or come up with this panel is because of a good friend of mine, Kelly Simonson. She's in this call right now. I don't think she's a planner, but she's very passionate about planning, and I think she attends a lot of planning related events.
Mhm.
I think she had a question for you guys as well. She wants to.
is so sweet. No, this was literally all George. No, not at all. I was just like the cheerleader that was like, no, you should actually go for it. Like literally, it never hurts to ask. It never hurts to reach out. Like literally, what all of you have been saying is like, show your personality, show your passion. And I'm so glad that I am like an inspiring force to like showing how passionate you are about planning. And on that note, I was wondering if any of you have experience like either applying for grants or writing grants, granting grants, and like what that sort of looks like. And if so, like I have a question pursuant to that.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe.
I was about to say, I think Young and Aaron probably are more closer to it, but
Yeah,
when I was at the Public Housing Authority, we were writing grants, all the time.
right,
One of the
right.
ones that we did recently, it's not planning related specifically, but we got the youth build program at RHE in Rockville, which is a
Mm-hmm.
high school construction and GED program for kids like 18 to 20. And so that like we did a lot of grant writing over there. It was mostly on the housing and the economic development side.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I can share some of the aspects. I mean, I was not in the selection side of the grant, but the writing the grant, so I don't know what they're gonna be looking into. But if I were, yeah, if I were the selector, I'd really seeking into the good storytelling. In other words, like a lot of people just happen to put facts, data. I mean, yes, data is important. Data is necessary. However, if you're just like scattering all the data, literally, I'm saying this, scattering the data, then it's more work for reader. Like, what are you trying to say? But you
Mm-hmm.
gotta kind of put cohesive, deliverable and convincing story. Why is it important to you? I'm gonna actually go back to Fanny Gonzalez's, saying that really what's important to you, you need to actually genuinely tell the story. Then the reader gets it. So grant is the same thing. If you really care about that project, in my case, it was actually for the park improvement project in underserved community in Montgomery County. We were actually chasing for the federal grant, and so we were actually putting our heart in it, not just putting the data, but also what we really intended to help the community itself and what kind of benefit they're going to get out of. That was actually really meaningful grant writing I've done together with our team. So I think you got to mean it and be genuine about it.
Yeah. In a yeah, and just to piggyback off that, sorry, Aaron, if you to add, but in a previous life, I reviewed grants for HUD through brownfields and their economic development programs and things like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you do have a rubric that you have to follow. Did they get this? This is points and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
what inevitably happens is that you have more projects that you can fund than money that you've got that all score relatively the same. You'll usually have a bunch of projects in a certain area.
Yeah.
And you'll have it add points to different things. And as she was saying, that narrative is super helpful because it's what's selling the project. We all like everybody on this call is gonna have professional skills that they're able to put forward to projects. Like this is how you do a thing, right? That's how you make a thing happen. A master plan, how you redo a corridor and whatever. But exactly as she was saying is what's the story behind that? What's going to do when you're done? If we're all about efficiency, seems to be the word of the day.
Yeah.
We just make a list of things and we just go for it. We just top to bottom, then we start all over again. It's
No, I
how
totally
transportation
appreciate
departments
that.
work. Yeah. But that narrative can really sell it, and it helps to sell it too when your granting agency, whatever it is, your foundation, your government thing, is then taking the 10, 12, however many grants that they give out for that cycle and say, here's what we've discovered, who's who we found and here's what we're doing. And if you'll help sell that and allow them to
Mhm.
sell that image of what they're trying to do out there. And that's a huge help. Don't
Yes.
skimp on the rubric. Make sure you answer the questions. I'm just saying that don't stop there.
Definitely, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, it looks like other people have questions, so I'm gonna pause there. Thank you so much.
Well, I have I did a little bit of grant review at while I was at Maryland Department of Planning. But Kelly, did you have a specific question? It seemed like you had a specific question.
Like, yeah, but like there's other people with their hands up and stuff. So like it's literally not a big deal. Like I'm sure I could probably get you guys' emails from George, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then yeah, thank you so much. But thank you guys so much for being here also.
It might also still be very helpful to hear what your question is, Kelly, because some of us are learning, so
All
feel
right.
free.
So basically, like, you know how Bethesda has their like short, essentially trolley transportation system, and it's like partially funded by the local businesses because of the projected economic gain that they get from this like minor transportation system. I am just wondering, like, is it realistic? Oh, thank you so much, James. Is it realistic to think that that model could be applied for on the basis of like the economic activity generated like in other communities around the county, or is that, do you think that that is something that really only lightning would strike in Bethesda because of its unique economic position?
I have a really short answer and then a much, much, much longer answer.
Okay.
The short answer is, at least I think in Montgomery County, it's a bit hit or miss. Someplace like Silver Spring might have the economic density to do it, or
Mhm.
someplace like that. Otherwise, like on a sort of similar note, there's approaches like tax increment financing districts and things like that to sort of capture that are often like, or business. You often see that's like a more detailed version of like a business improvement district, in which you'll see like a small um a small sales tax added on, like 0.25% or something like that, within a particular area to fund benefits to that particular
Mhm.
area. And that's been very popular over the last
I
couple of
love that
decades for the
actually.
municipalities. So there's a variety of ways to sort of go to approach that. um I will say, to not make lands, like transit tends to be so capital intensive, it's sort of a different, it's a different pot of funding. And that's the short version. The longer version, we can, please feel
Yeah,
free to email and I can give you some more. There's some talk about that we've had as well.
yeah, I will.
I think Felix, well, I had a question first, and then Homian.
Yes, thank you again. My question is about, I think, a little bit of the field, um, because I have a landscape architecture dual degree that I'm working on. Climate, ecology are all really prescient items that I'm like really trying to drive forward towards. And so I think what I'm getting at is what do you know about planning as it relates to climate, ecology, and the nature to human dynamic? And also, how does my uh, the landscape architecture support planning and vice versa? How can I be a contribution given this skill that I'm cultivating? And how can I bring planning to landscape architecture as well?
I can speak something about it. Particularly when I was working in Montgomery County planning, I collaborated a lot with the Montgomery planning staff, who is writing sector plan for actually the long range planning. So let's say I'm writing the long range plan for the Silver Spring or Bethesda. At the time, we always had a climate related chapter. So what the landscape architect compared to architect student or the planner was contributing is the ecology aspect. How does the certain tree planting strategy or tree planting technique itself can lush the street, so that way the climate, if the climate effect is getting less in terms of the cooling effect with the tree, and also it can also improve the housing price. There was even research for poor neighborhood versus a more richer neighborhood. There's like different tree, street planting has done, or lack of planting and such. And those things are can be illustrated, or the data can be provided, or research can be provided and such. Those are more in tuned by landscape architecture student, or the with the landscape background planner. So you guys can definitely pitch on that. And the other thing, at least in my side, it hasn't been actually developed as a little more formal matters, but giving some idea. Right now, since due to climate change, the sea level is rising, right? So therefore, what we see in the development review is certain parcel was, let's say, only 10% of floodplain, so 90% was developable. Now it became like 60% is a floodplain because sea level rise. So therefore, my development right itself is readily reduced. So the developers say, no, like we can't do that. So please, measure my developability as a post proposal, not pre-proposal. So in other words, they came with a proposal elevating it's actually housing in College Park, UMD, elevating the developer development proposal so that way floodplain can still go under while they're still developing the up level. So they said, okay, with this kind of technology, we should be better measured off after the post development for the floodplain. So let us develop. So, there's a different way of convincing people and different way of still ecology, let it work while we're dealing with a different context with the climate change. That kind of thing is much in tune with the landscape architecture student because they're more topography oriented, they're more ecology oriented. So that is something that I'm just giving a little tip of idea and develop your own matters.
Mhm.
Anyone else had anything?
Oh, Aaron, did you have any comments? I had one little short thing to say, and I didn't want to jump on if you had.
Well, so the only thing I'll say is that urban design and landscape architecture in particular are very useful skills
Yeah.
to have as a planner. And it's a really helpful background to have. We have a coworker at Prince George's County named Andrew Bishop, and he is the czar of all things development review. And his background is in landscape architecture. And so I think having that background is really helpful, particularly for development review, just because you kind of know what you're looking at more than someone who, say, has a background in policy more than urban design or architecture. So having those those three fields sort of interact a lot. So having a good knowledge base of all of them is very, very useful.
Yeah, absolutely. That actually really ties nicely to what I was going to say, which is manage my ignorance. As we're getting site plans and reviewing projects and things like that, um, as a planning board, like we can't be experts in everything. That's why everybody else exists to tell us what we don't know. And a lot of the times, particularly like in Montgomery County, and I'm sure it's very similar in PG as well, we'll be going from an ag reserve question about pollinators to trees that go best in an urban environment to replant the reforestation questions back and forth to like water, what protected water districts and things like that we have areas that we have within it. So like a lot of the times what we're doing is we're coming for solutions to problems exactly like, Hu Zhang was saying of like, the developable area is only 60% after we take out the floodplain. How much of the floodplain do we have to take out? If they build it like this, if they build it, here, if we, like I said, employ a technology, can we get it? Because what we want is that density and infill development. That's a huge climate, that's a huge help for climate, as everybody uses less resources per capita the closer they are into denser areas. So what we're wanting in those areas is how do we do that and then maintain some sort of, additional climate protections, water protections. We have a lot of streams in Montgomery County, way more streams than I thought we had before I got on the planning commission. So many streams. So all that we have to go back and forth to that, and we have climate requirements that we have to do, and that we're very keen on making sure that we're integrating early into the process. So if you're in a place like in Montgomery County, which is fairly well developed, or PG County, which assumes fairly well developed, you're going to be in those conversations. If you're going to someplace else which may not have as well developed a climate or you know an environmental group or something like that gets in, try to get in as early as possible on those projects. It solves a lot of problems before it comes to the planning board, and we're trying to hash it out when we don't know what the heck we're doing, on the dais. So like there's benefits to hashing out a lot of that before it gets to us.
Thank you for that. I think Homie have a question. If you want to.
Yeah. So yeah, actually, my question is built off of the other questions. that other people mentioned and were answered. So kind of going back to the urban design and also GIS. So I'm just giving myself as an example. So my background is urban design, and I consider myself I've been working in GIS for a long time, but I know about like the public sector, like state, county, and every sector, they still favor, urban planners to, hire. But because I'm an international student, I'm not. I cannot just apply to those. So I was looking at it. So I want to ask you guys, why is there like they look at these two skills different? In public sector and private sector, in my experience. So public sector, they agree that if you are like a planner and you are experienced in these uh, skills, either urban design or GIS, you still have a chance to get hired. But I'm exploring private sector, and they favor either architects in urban design and or computer science people in GIS, even though their projects are mostly related to urban planning to hire, which is really frustrating to me and kind of becomes like a dichotomy in my mind because it's like they know that I know this skill. I'm skillful in these areas that are like in demand, but for some reason I'm not favored because of the nature of my program. So that's I wanted to ask you guys, why is this? Am I just thinking? Am I just wrong about this, or is it actually
Could you
something happening?
clarify your question? I mean, I wasn't totally clear. Are you saying that GIS is less preferred or more
No,
preferred
no, no.
or?
I mean, like, so I applied for GIS positions because that's like what I want to do. See, and you guys said like you should present yourself with what you want to do, what you're passionate about. And when I do that, when and I attend a lot of conferences, like GIS conferences, I look at like a lot of job fairs and everything. In my experience, when I first of all, not many GIS positions are open in public sector, and the private ones, when they open it, they favor computer science people to urban planners, even though they work in urban planning. And that's what I'm saying. I'm really confused. Why is it like this? Like, is there a reason? What's going on? It's like because I'm new to this country. I don't know. Uh, I kind of felt different. Or I thought that these would be like coming handy, but it feels like because I'm a master of community planning student. I'm not, I'm not going to be in priority in hiring committees.
I mean, at least, since I'm not in the private sector side, at least no longer in private sector side, I can't really speak for computer science student versus landscape student for GIS. That's kind of new to me. And the first time I'm kind of shocked because if I were in the private sector, I would not, give a favor for that matters because computer science is very different animal than GIS. But having said that, another side, if I can offer, since you mentioned the international student, I myself came as an international student to US, and I've gone through the practical optional practical training 1 year, and then H-1B visa and such. Unfortunately, public sector cannot sponsor the visa. So any international student looking for, well, I shouldn't say any, at least the like local government PPC is not sponsoring the visa. So don't bother to look for a job because you're gonna waste your time, your optional practical training time, which is limited. Don't bother. Go to private sector, get the visa sponsor first. Once you get the H-1BB, then you can go to the next step. Unfortunately, there's not many door open for the public sector for that.
Yeah, I'm aware of this, and that's why it's frustrating to me because I know that I have an easier time finding a job related and getting hired by public sector, but I have this issue because I'm looking into private sector because of this issue. I've been having a harder time finding a job. That's exactly my problem. It's like I'm suited for a place that I cannot stay in, but it's really hard for me to get a job in a place that it's would accept me easier. So yeah. hopefully I'll have a better chance. I'm just
Yeah, I mean, at least my experience wise, so I got the H-1BB with the green card first from the private sector because they're the one who was sponsoring me. So
No.
once I get there, I was able to also transfer or shift to the public sector. So then you can actually work for more for the public good rather than profit. So I mean, sometimes you just need to build up on the opportunity. It might not be first shot.
Yeah.
I think it's 4:55. I'm not gonna, or I don't want to hold you guys over five if you guys don't want to. So, does anybody else have any more outstanding questions that they want to get out? Or if not, I have like a quick one. With the Purple Line, I know it's like a Montgomery County and PG County joint initiative. I was wondering, like with the neighborhoods that are being like affected, what are some like things or outreach that you guys do to kind of like help these communities out? And I know there's like probably a lot because the Purple Line Coalition and everything, but what are some things that the planning commissions and planning departments in these counties do?
Yeah, we've done a lot of outreach along the Purple Line corridor over the years as well. Now it's kind of into the fingers crossed landing phase of not being done. But and we did a lot of outreach whenever it came up on a master plan. There was a big section on it that touched on any of the places where it was, neighborhoods where it was going through. We did a lot of outreach, like direct outreach. Our communications folks and our planning, our master planning folks are really big on not just the public hearings and stuff, but we have some good local organizations that do the door knocking and the outreach and tabling and going basically the finding people where they are piece of it. And we've done a lot of that. And a lot of that is kind of like has kind of flowed up through us to the county council because at least within Montgomery County, the planning board and the parks department are part of MNCPPC. It's directly reports to the council. So we're separated out from the rest of the executive section of the government. So that's come up. And so there's been grants and bills and some ZTAs that have come through the county council have been related to information that we've gotten through our outreach, and that's that direct outreach to folks. And there's right of return options and higher levels of MPDUs, which is our moderately priced dwelling units in particular areas around the Purple Line corridor where there's going to be redevelopment. And so we've done a lot of work like that to try to make sure that this is the benefit that it's supposed to be widespread, and also the people that exist within the communities. Like right now, like part of the benefit that we're getting as a county is having more housing around these transit oriented nodes. And while we're doing that, we want to make sure that we maintain the neighborhoods that sort of exist in there, as they are, and allow folks to sort of maintain their residences and things like that. So a lot of that's come up through the planning department and been pushed over to the county council. And like I said, there's grants involved. It's Purple Line Corridor Coalition, things like that have come out of the planning department's outreach.
Thank you for that.
This my experience is past already for the community outreach aspect because I'm in the implementation side. But sharing that 15 years ago I did a Purple Line TOD study when I was in community planning in Prince George County, and that site is just coming up with the development. I did, the sector plan I've done or study I've done 15 years ago, M Square, that area also, started coming up with a like copped, developer, more of a project like that in Riverdale, and also the Glen Ridge Station in Purple Line. We just approved the affordable housing, which I am so excited about the TOD with affordable housing. Yay, Prince George County. So it takes time. So, I'm also shifting to the different kind of lessons learned. The planning, it does take time. You feel like, once you put the proposal, bam, you need to get the proposal approval and then get built. No, it takes a time, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I'm saying that the Purple Line itself, like at the time, we were all getting promised like it's going to come out and it's going to come out. But it's taking 15 years. It's still not built, right? Yeah, cross the finger. So it just, you got to be patient for planning. You might not see the outcome, but it'll come. Just it works as archaeologic time, but Don't give a hope.
Not wrong.
I just started at Prince George's County, so I couldn't speak to, their historic efforts all that much, other than my knowledge or my experience as a student at UMD. Um, my studio last semester was a partnership with Prince George's County, and our studio was based in Langley Park, which is in Prince
Mm,
George's County. And I know that and is also along that Purple Line corridor. So a lot of our focus on that project was on, particularly anti-displacement, and just what role the county plays, what the different stakeholders are, and how the county can engage with those stakeholders. So that's if you're interested in, that you can check that out. I'm sure that's somewhere on in some archive somewhere. Um, and I know that there have been a couple other reports by the University of Maryland that I know Montgomery County uses, and I believe Prince George's County uses as well, um, particularly along that international corridor that stretches along between Montgomery County and Prince George's County, Long Branch, Langley Park, Tacoma Park. Um, yeah, so there are a lot of studies that I know both counties use that have been conducted by University of Maryland staff and students. So if you ever get an opportunity to work on, one of those projects, especially in your studio, just keep that in mind that, that the work you do is useful and it matters.
yeah, that's it. We continuously come back to things, particularly about Purple Line. Purple Line's been going for quite some time, but like we continually come back to things that people have done 10, 15 years, 20 years ago. We may be back to a master plan that was written 25 years ago or 30 years ago that we're still using, you know, plans and reports and stuff that folks have done. So it stays there and it's there to be used by folks, much later. You never know when something might get pulled back out.
Well, thank you for that.
Mhm.
It was very insightful. We all want to ride the Purple Line someday. Yeah. Does anybody else have any like burning questions or something they want to get off their chest, like as as we close today? Um, if not, I'd just like to say, it
Oh,
was
I think we have one for
oh,
Daryl there. We have a hand raised there.
oh,
I saw
sorry,
someone.
sorry. Darwin, did you want to say something?
So, like, I don't know if you guys discussed this, but like, do you think high speed rails are possible one day in the US? Or like,
How
like
practically do you want
how
me to
come
answer
that
that?
hasn't happened? Because like other countries like like China and Japan have those. So
Yeah.
I'm just like curious, like why we don't.
Ooh, there's a lot of
Yes.
yeah, there's a lot of research on that one. You may be more familiar with the most recent stuff than I am. Yeah, I mean it's not rocket science, right? Even rocket science and rocket science. Like high speed rail is out there. People have been doing it for a while. We just never invested the money or political will in doing it. Keep going back to Texas because that's where I'm originally from, but there's been talk about connecting the Texas Triangle together, Austin, Dallas, and Houston, using high-speed rail, and it's decades past it needed to be there. The best time to do it was 50 years ago. The second best time is now. Um, but it's
Just to
capital
just to
intensive.
add, because I do have some interest in research and trends, it would
Mhm.
require, I believe, just a ton of infrastructure change. So um, it's not something I don't think we can accommodate yet, but if there's
No,
plans to do so by, legislation and governments, definitely.
no. Yeah, you can't put it on existing rail, but I think that there's in the more short term and the more, not that broad a sweep, and maybe Mayor can comment on it as well. But things like extending Mark Train to the weekends or extending two-way Mark Train service later in the day and having better, particularly I think on the Brunswick line because that's the one that runs through Montgomery County. My PG County colleagues can have their whole thing about New Carrollton. But like like I think that there's I mean, we have train stops on the MARC train line that have no houses around them that are just basically in empty fields, next to industrial areas for no reason. And we've downzoned those to like R90 and R120. And so there's considerable I think space for transit-oriented development around existing transit lines. Virginia just bought up a bunch of CSX rail, I think for about 3 billion a couple of years ago, that allows them to have, right of way and to expand the VRE. So I think there's options for transit for existing heavy transit in the region. There's some flex there. The high speed, yeah, is kind of that's a whole different animal that's pushing out something completely different. But there is, I think, options for standard heavy rail transit that we haven't fully sort of incorporated yet.
To
I
add,
have a two theory. Oh, go ahead.
sorry about that. Oh, you go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So I have a two theory. My first theory is that yeah, based on my experience in Purple Line, the private property right is so strong in US compared to other country. So therefore, property acquisition takes so long. Look at the Purple Line, how long it took just acquire the private property itself to complete those small limited segment itself. So if you're talking about high speed trail, which is like state to state to city, it's gonna take a heck of a lot of time to acquire the land. That in itself is gonna take a while. The
No,
second theory I have is that it's like blessing and curse for US. We have so much land and everybody's spreading out. There's no density to be
yeah,
able to support the amount of infrastructure. So it's cost prohibitive in a way. Like everybody like to enjoy their single family with a big yard. So if you have like within a mile, there's only 10,000 versus like in Asia or Europe, there's like 100,000 people living in there. It becomes a very costly, prohibitive.
yeah,
So those are my pet peeve theory I can
yeah.
offer.
I think I absolutely right. I will say that things like take there are options, I think, for large infrastructure projects given the property right issue, which is a huge one, which we go through a lot when we get things. But take something like the Intercounty Connector, the ICC, the 200, like that was conceived and built much more rapidly than Purple Line, and it's because there's certain laws around property acquisition for roads that don't apply to transit and that aren't fought nearly as hard. Of course, you're trying to run transit through places where people have a lot of money. If you're trying to run transit through Bethesda or Chevy Chase, you're going to have a different thing than if you're trying to run the ICC through the swamp, essentially. So there are things like that, but you can do those, but you really have to have a political coalition willing to sort of say that, like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and use the right of condemnation to access the land that you need, and you get a lot less pushback on that on something like 200 than you do on like I mean, how many times was the Purple Line sued? I can't remember off the top of my head, but a lot. But 200 came in, much more quickly and much more under budget as Intercounty Connector than Purple Line did, and there's structural reasons for that too on the property rights side.
To add on to that, I know the MagDiv I think they're talking about building it between Baltimore and DC too, and the area that they're trying to put the Baltimore station is like, I think there's not much economic, it's like in South Baltimore, there's not much
Mm,
economic development, and all the jobs, I think they would be coming out from the outside too, so it just shows that there's like so many issues with building this kind of like these big massive projects in our area.
yeah, yeah. And one area in that I think is important as well, not to, pile on, but public capacity to manage those contracts, because the capacity, exists. Digging the tunnel, that capacity exists within the private sector. Managing that to not have cost overruns and understand about, digging tunnels or lane track or anything like that, or mag lane, hang maglev, requires like capacity within the government, like contracting capacity and oversight. And so there's something there too, given that we're losing some of that capacity at the federal level right now, across a variety of areas.
I'm also one foot in front of the other kind of guy. So It's good to keep, high-speed rail in the back of your mind as like a long-term goal if that's something you're really passionate about. But I wouldn't go around every day thinking about how do we get to high-speed rail. Be thinking more about how do we encourage and support alternative transportation methods to cars, because the less you can, or the more you can get people separated from their cars, the more likely it is that, you
Yeah.
know, rail travel becomes more politically feasible, and then you can start to get the ball rolling. So,
Yeah.
one foot in front of the other. Let's start by, encouraging alternative modes of transportation in general, and then once we have a bigger base of that, then
Yeah.
we can start thinking about high-speed rail.
Yeah. I think that, not to keep on this topic, but it's one, like, I think that's why you've seen a lot of movement toward bus rapid transit. It's cheaper to install, and it can move through, particularly in the suburban areas like we have in Montgomery County. Um, like along Veers Mill, if you're familiar with Veers, or the east-west connection, or up 355, that you can run bus rapid transit and not need quite as much of that density as you would have for standard heavy rail or high speed or something like that. And you sort of build, that's man, as much as I want to take the train, I if I could never drive again, I'd be perfectly happy doing that. But that's a, decades long project to think about high speed rail connections outside of the sort of the Acela corridor. But there are other sort of, you know, almost infill style transit options that I think can benefit a lot from support from planning, from folks that are doing the planning work, like, the BRT stations. We used to have the corridor cities transit ways. You know, we have some capacity to do some more of that and allow the development to follow that transit, and then use that as a springboard for more transit and more density along certain corridors, which we're trying to do in Montgomery County. I'll tell you if it works in about 20 years.
Well, thank you for that. And
Mhm.
I guess if does anybody else have any more questions? If not, I'd like to say I put a lot of effort into organizing this. I know it got pushed back a decent amount of time, but thank you guys so much for joining, council members as well as students and community members. It's been great. I think we fostered a lot of great conversations today about planning, and I hope that like future generations. I know like planning isn't really taught in grade school. There's like far less undergraduate programs in planning. And no, I hope that changes in the future. Like, I think kids should learn about planning. It's an important part of our uh government and society. Like, a lot of things involve planning. So, uh, very passionate about it, and yeah, I hope everyone here is too. And thanks again. Thank you so much for attending. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for organizing it. I really appreciate it. Please, anybody feel free to shoot me an email, and I dropped it in the chat. And more than happy to chat more and talk. If you have any questions or any follow up, or you think anything else, please reach out.
Yeah.
Same here. And
Thank you, George.
kudos. Yeah. Thank you for
Yeah, it's
organizing
wonderful,
it.
George. Thank you.
Great work.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks guys for attending as well.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Have a wonderful Friday.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Have a good one.
Bye now.
Bye.